The year was 1867, and the Platte River ran high with spring floods. Its waters boiled with mud and broken branches, dragging whole trees downstream like twigs. Along its bank, a lone rider urged his tired bay horse closer, the reins slack in one hand, a battered hat pulled low against the setting sun. His name was Caleb Hunter, though few knew him well enough to call him that. Most in the nearest town, 30 miles south and full of men who didn't care to remember names, simply called him the Drifter. Caleb carried little more than a rifle, a coil of rope, and the heavy silence of a man who'd seen too much war. He'd fought for the Union and buried a wife before he ever saw 30. Now he wandered the frontier with no clear direction, hunting work when hunger forced him, riding farther west when the pass caught up too close. He had no cause, no kin, and if you ask him, no hope worth holding to. That evening, as the sky burned orange and the wind rattled cottonwood leaves, he heard it. A cry, high-pitched, desperate, not the sound of a coyote, nor the low, wounded call of cattle, but a scream, a human scream, carried thin and broken over the roar of the river. Caleb stiffened. The bay danced beneath him, ears twitching. He swung down, boots sinking into soft mud, and scanned the water. At first he saw nothing but froth and churn. Then, halfway to the far bank, something flashed pale against the current. An arm, a face, dark hair plastered across it, eyes wide, mouth open in another cry lost to the river. Without thinking, Caleb dropped his rifle, stripped off his coat, and plunged into the current. The shock near stopped his heart. The water was ice from mountain snowmelt. It clawed at his chest, dragged at his legs, tried to roll him under. He kicked hard, gasping, eyes fixed on that flailing figure. "Hold on," he shouted, though he knew the roar of water swallowed every word. She went under once, twice, each time vanishing like the river had claimed her for good. Caleb lunged forward, lungs burning, arms cutting through the current. The third time she surfaced, coughing, he reached her. His fingers closed around her wrist, slim, strong, thrashing with terror. She clawed at him, nails scraping his arm, wild with panic. He pulled her against him, forcing her face above water. "Easy, I've got you." The river didn't care. It spun them both, slammed his shoulder against a hidden rock. Stars burst in his vision. His grip nearly slipped, but he tightened his arm around her, kicking sideways, angling for a stretch of calmer water near the bank. Every stroke felt like dragging a boulder. She fought him less now, exhausted, limp, shuddering. He hooked his arm under her chest, pushing her head higher, and drove himself toward shore. Roots jutted from the mud, slick as grease. Twice his hand slid free, nails ripping. On the third lunge, he caught hold of a root and heaved. The river tried to tear them back, but he pulled with everything left. One last surge, and they tumbled onto wet sand, coughing, choking, shivering. Caleb rolled to his knees, dragging her higher out of reach of the water. His chest heaved, his vision blurred. But she was alive, spitting river water, trembling, eyes fierce with something between fear and pride. She was young, maybe 17, her dress torn, soaked, clinging to thin shoulders. Dark hair tangled across her face, skin the color of warm earth. Her features marked her as Cheyenne. Caleb froze. A Cheyenne girl. He knew what that meant. Settlers called them raiders, horse thieves, killers. Men he'd ridden with before wouldn't hesitate to put a bullet in her, drowned or not. And if her people found him with her, God help him. But he couldn't undo what he'd done. He couldn't leave her here, half dead on the bank. She coughed again, tried to sit up. He steadied her with a hand, careful, as though she might bolt. "You're safe," he said. His voice was low, rough with exhaustion. "You're out of it." Her eyes flicked to his, sharp and mistrusting. She said something in her tongue, harsh syllables, quick, full of warning. He shook his head. "Don't understand." She tried to stand and staggered, nearly falling. Caleb caught her elbow. She pushed him away, pride bristling even in weakness, and managed to stand on her own. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. The sun had dipped low now, shadows stretching long. The prairie wind carried the smell of rain, though the sky was clear. Caleb knew night here meant cold enough to kill if you were wet. He led her a little inland, found a hollow near some cottonwoods, and struck flint for a fire. She watched him, wary, eyes darting to his rifle propped nearby. She said nothing more, though every glance told him she would rather be anywhere but beside him. When the flames caught, she crouched near them, holding her hands to the heat. Her lips were blue, her body trembling hard. Caleb shrugged out of his shirt, wrung it dry, and pulled it back on, teeth chattering. He tossed her his coat. She hesitated, then snatched it and wrapped it around her shoulders, gaze still sharp with suspicion. They sat in silence, listening to the river roar beyond the trees. Caleb studied her from the corner of his eye. She was no ordinary girl, even half dead from drowning. She carried herself with the stubborn dignity of someone who'd known hardship and refused to bow. Her gaze burned with something he recognized, grief, anger, maybe both. Finally she spoke. Her English was broken, halting, but clear enough. "You, help me." "Why?" Caleb poked at the fire with a stick, watching sparks fly. "Because you were drowning." Didn't think on it. She frowned, as though this answer didn't sit right with her. White men not help. He didn't argue. He'd seen enough to know she spoke truth. Still, something in her voice struck him. That she'd expected death. That she thought it certain. "What happened?" he asked. Her eyes narrowed, dark with memory. She shook her head. "Men. Bad men. Take me. I run." She gestured toward the river. "Fall." Caleb's jaw tightened. He'd heard stories, settlers taking captives, trading lives like cattle. He didn't press her for details. Her silence said enough. "You've got people?" he asked. "Family?" Her chin lifted. "My father. He find me." She tapped her chest. "Daughter of chief." Caleb stared at her, firelight painting her face in bronze and shadow. A chief's daughter. That explained the pride. Explained the danger, too. If her father came looking and found her here with him, the girl wrapped his coat, tighter, eyelids heavy with exhaustion. But before she drifted off, she fixed him with one more look. "He come," she said softly, "at sunrise." Caleb lay awake long after she slept. The fire cracked low. The river muttered. His mind spun with unease. If she spoke truth, warriors might be riding this way, already. He'd seen what came of such meetings, burned farms, bodies in the dust, vengeance that never ended. He wanted no part of it, yet when he glanced at her, face turned toward the fire, lips parted in restless dreams, he felt something stir in him he thought long dead. The memory of a daughter's face, a family he'd buried back east. He clenched his jaw. Come sunrise, he'd have a choice. Ride off and save himself, or stand his ground and face whatever thunder her people brought with them. But even as he told himself to leave, he knew he wouldn't. The night stretched slow, filled with the restless howl of coyotes and the far-off drumming of hooves on hard ground. Caleb sat with his rifle across his knees, watching the shadows. Every snap of a twig set his nerves on edge. Once, close to midnight, boot steps rustled through the brush. His hand flew to the rifle. He slipped to the edge of the hollow, peering out. Two men stumbled along the riverbank, lantern light swinging between them. Settlers. Drunk, voices slurred. "Thought I heard shoutin' earlier," one muttered. The other spat. "Coyotes or Injuns drownin'. Ain't our trouble." Their lantern flared bright, sweeping dangerously near the hollow. Caleb froze. The girl stirred in her sleep, mumbling. He pressed a hand gently over her shoulder, stilling her, eyes fixed on the men. The light hung on the brush, a heartbeat too long. Caleb's finger tightened on the trigger. Then the men laughed, turned, and staggered downriver, lantern bobbing away into darkness. Caleb exhaled, muscles trembling from the strain of stillness. He eased back into the hollow, firelight painting the girl's sleeping face. He couldn't shake the truth. Danger pressed from both sides. Settlers would kill him for helping her. Warriors might kill him for touching her. By dawn, he felt wrung dry. The girl stirred, sitting up, eyes bright with something fierce. She looked east, where the horizon glowed faint silver. "They come," she whispered, and in the still morning air, Caleb heard it, too, distant hoofbeats rolling like thunder across the prairie. The sun rose blood-red, and with it came the warriors. The hoofbeats grew louder with each breath of dawn. Caleb stood with his rifle loose in his hands, heart hammering, eyes fixed on the horizon. The girl rose beside him, his coat still around her shoulders, her chin lifted like she'd been waiting for this moment. Out of the silver haze came riders. First a dark line, then shapes. Horses, a dozen at least, streaming across the prairie in a thunder of muscle and dust. At their head rode a man whose presence seemed carved from the land itself, tall in the saddle, shoulders broad, long braids flying. The sun caught the paint on his chest, streaked red and black, and the eagle feathers in his hair. Even from a distance Caleb knew this was the father. The girl stepped forward, voice breaking with sudden strength. "It is him." Caleb's mouth went dry. He thought of running, saddling his bay, and bolting before the riders closed in. But the thought died quick. Running now meant a bullet in the back. Better to stand and meet them, however it fell. The riders slowed as they neared, fanning out in a crescent that boxed Caleb against the trees and the river. Hooves churned the grass, steam rising from flanks. Bows were drawn, rifles cocked, eyes dark and unblinking, fixed on him with the weight of judgment. The girl lifted her hand, calling out in her tongue. The chief dismounted in a single smooth motion. His boots hit the ground with a thud, and he strode forward, towering a shadow against the rising sun. Caleb lowered his rifle slightly, but kept it ready. The chief stopped 10 paces off. His gaze cut like a knife, scanning Caleb, then the girl. She ran to him, words spilling fast and sharp. He caught her shoulders, searching her face as if to make sure she was whole. She nodded, speaking quick, pointing back toward the river, toward Caleb. The chief's eyes narrowed. He stepped toward Caleb, every motion heavy with command. "You." His English was rough, but clear, voice low as distant thunder. "You touch my daughter?" Caleb straightened, forcing calm. "Pulled her from the river. Else she'd be dead." The chief's jaw worked, unreadable. His gaze flicked to his warriors. They muttered, some snarled. One spat at the ground, rifle trembling with the urge to raise it. The girl broke in, her words flying, hands gesturing. She pointed to Caleb, mimed drowning, then lifted her hand high like a prayer. The chief listened, face stone. When she finished, silence stretched long enough Caleb felt the weight of a dozen triggers itching to fire. Finally the chief spoke. "You save, but why?" Caleb's throat tightened. The truth came rough. Didn't think on it. She was drowning. A man don't watch someone die if he can help it. The chief studied him, eyes sharp as flint. At last he nodded once. Not approval, acknowledgement. Then his words cut cold. Words are wind. "Prove." 2 warriors stepped forward. One shoved a spear into Caleb's chest. The other barked something that made the others laugh, darkly. Caleb stiffened. "Prove how?" The chief's gaze never wavered. "Stand with us. Danger comes. You fight. You bleed. Then we know truth." Caleb swallowed. He had no wish to join another man's war. But looking at the girl, her eyes wide, hopeful, still clutching his coat, he knew refusal meant death here and now. Before he could answer, a sharp crack split the air. A rifle shot. Bark burst from a cottonwood above his head. Warriors whirled, shouting. More shots rang out, the twang of bows answering. From the ridge beyond the river came a half-dozen settlers, rifles spitting fire. Faces twisted with drink and hate. Savages, one bellowed. And a white man with M, traitor. Bullets kicked up dirt. Horses screamed. Caleb dropped to one knee. Rifle to shoulder, instincts old as war snapping back. He fired once, saw a settler tumble from his saddle. Smoke rolled thick. The warriors scattered, taking cover, arrows hissing back across the water. The girl cried out, the chief shielding her with his body. Caleb reloaded, breath sharp. Another settler charged down the slope, hat flapping, gun high. Caleb fired again, missed by inches. The warrior beside him loosed an arrow that buried deep in the man's chest. He fell hard, rifle clattering into the river. the air filled with chaos, yells, the thud of hooves, the hot stink of powder. Caleb found himself fighting shoulder to shoulder with the very men who might have killed him minutes ago. A settler broke through the trees, eyes wide at the sight of Caleb firing alongside the warriors. "Hunter, you lost your damn mind," he snarled, raising his gun. Caleb didn't answer. He shot first. The man's face snapped back, body crashing into the brush. The battle turned quick. Outnumbered and unprepared, the settlers faltered under the combined fury. Within minutes, they were in full retreat, dragging their wounded back toward the ridge, leaving the dead behind. The prairie fell still again, smoke drifting. Caleb lowered his rifle, chest heaving, ears ringing. Around him, warriors who moments ago had aimed their bows at his heart now looked at him with something new. Surprise, grudging respect. The chief stepped forward, eyes on Caleb. "You fight," he said. "Not run. Not hide." Caleb wiped sweat from his brow. Didn't have much choice. The chief's mouth curved, not quite a smile. "Always choice. You stand. You bleed. You live." Caleb glanced down. His arm was cut from a grazing shot, blood slicking his sleeve. He hadn't felt it in the heat of battle. The chief nodded once, as though the wound sealed some silent bargain. "You come with us." Caleb stiffened. "And if I don't?" The warriors shifted hands on weapons. The chief's gaze bore into him. "Then you die here, alone." The girl stepped close, her hand brushing Caleb's sleeve, eyes pleading. "Come," she said softly. "My father see truth. You safe." Safe. Caleb almost laughed. Nothing about this felt safe. But as he looked at the bodies cooling in the grass, at the warriors already moving swift and silent to erase the trail, he knew the chief spoke plain. If he stayed, settlers would hunt him as a traitor. If he went, perhaps there was a chance, however thin, to survive. He gave short nod. "I'll ride with you." The chief's voice rumbled. "At dawn we ride. You walk first. We see if coyote or man follows." The girl translated with a flash of a smile, though Caleb read the warning beneath it. He was not yet trusted, merely spared. That night they camped in the shelter of a low ridge. Fires burned small, smoke thin to hide their position. Caleb sat apart, watched close by two warriors who muttered and spat whenever his eyes met theirs. He cleaned his rifle, hands steady though his mind churned. The girl sat near the chief, speaking low, pointing once toward Caleb. The chief listened, nodding slow, though his gaze stayed hard. When she finally rose and crossed to him, Caleb straightened. She crouched by his fire, expression caught between gratitude and defiance. "You save again," she said. "Fight with us. My father, he see." Caleb studied her. "He doesn't trust me." Her shoulders lifted. "Trust is not gift, is earned." He gave a humorless chuckle. "Seems I've been earning trust my whole damn life. Never enough." Her head tilted, eyes searching his face. "You carry heavy," she said, "like stone." The words struck deeper than he expected. He looked away, jaw tight. "War does that." She touched his sleeve lightly. "But river-washed stone makes smooth. Maybe this is time." Before he could answer, a horn sounded low from the ridge. Warriors stiffened, grabbing weapons. Caleb tensed, rifle ready. But it was only a scout returning, breathless, reporting in their tongue. The girl translated. "More men. Settlers. They gather. Tomorrow they come strong." Caleb's stomach knotted. He'd seen how vengeance spread. One skirmish lit a fire that burned whole valleys. If settlers came at dawn with numbers, it would be slaughter. The chief stood, raising his hand for silence. He spoke firm, voice carrying over the camp. Caleb caught only pieces through the girl's quick whispers. They would move before dawn. They would not run, but meet the threat on ground of their choosing. The girl looked to Caleb. "You stand with us?" He hesitated. He owed these people nothing. He wanted no more wars, no more graves. But he saw her eyes, hope fierce as flame, and felt the weight of his own choices pressing down. If he walked away now, she'd die with the rest come sunrise. He drew a slow breath. "I'll stand." The chief approached, looming, eyes locked on his. "Then know this. Tomorrow decides. If your heart lies with them, he jerked his chin toward the dark horizon, we kill you first. If with us, you fight until no breath remains. Caleb met his stare, unflinching. I've nothing left to lose. The chief held him a long moment, then gave a single nod. We see it dawn. As the camp settled into tense silence, Caleb lay awake, rifle across his chest, listening to the distant echo of drums carried on the wind. The girl slept near, her father a silent shadow beside her. Caleb closed his eyes, knowing sleep would not come. Somewhere beyond the ridge, settlers sharpened blades and loaded rifles, hungering for blood. And when dawn broke, Caleb Hunter would be caught between two worlds, with no way back to the life he once knew. The prairie was black with night when the war party moved. Hooves muffled, fires cold, they rode low through grass wet with dew. Caleb walked at the front, the chief's command sharp in his ears, first into danger, last to safety. His bay horse followed behind, reins trailing. He carried his rifle across his chest, eyes sweeping the shadows, heart hammering like it had in the war. Dawn crept slow, painting the horizon in blood-colored streaks. From a low ridge, they saw it. A column of settlers, 24 strong, rifles glinting, wagons rolling heavy with barrels and crates. They came like men certain of victory, flags snapping above them, voices carrying across the flats. Caleb counted numbers quick, twice the warrior's strength, maybe more. The chief raised his hand, signaling silence. He stood tall, face painted black across the eyes, red down his chest. His daughter sat her horse beside him, chin high, Caleb's coat still draped around her shoulders. She looked at Caleb once, eyes steady, as though to remind him why he was here. The chief spoke low, words rolling like thunder. His daughter translated, "We fight here, river at our back. No retreat. My father says, better to bleed on the ground of our choosing than run into their rope." Caleb nodded grim. He had no illusions. If death came today, he'd meet it with his rifle hot. The settlers advanced, voices jeering. Caleb recognized faces among them, men he'd drunk beside, men who'd hired his hands for cattle drives. Now, those same men had eyes hard with hate. One shouted, "There he is, Hunter, riding with savages." Another voice roared, "String him up first." The chief's daughter stiffened, her gaze snapping to Caleb, searching his face. He felt shame rise hot in his chest, but there was no time for talk. The first shots cracked. Smoke bloomed. A warrior toppled from his saddle, arrow loosed wild. Horses screamed. Then the fight was on. Caleb dropped to one knee, firing clean, reloading fast. A settler fell, blood soaking his shirt. Another lunged from behind a wagon, and Caleb's bullet caught him square in the chest. Powder smoke burned his lungs, the air thick with screams and the clash of steel. Warriors moved like shadows, weaving between horses, arrows flying, tomahawks flashing. But the settlers pressed hard, firing from cover, driving them back step by bloody step. Caleb fought close beside the chief. The old man wielded his rifle like an axe, swinging the butt into skulls, firing point blank, never faltering. His voice thundered commands, rallying his people even as bodies fell around him. The girl darted through the chaos, pulling wounded men to cover, handing fresh arrows to her kin. Once she stumbled, a settler raising his pistol toward her. Caleb's rifle cracked, dropping the man before his shot fired. She looked back, eyes wide, breath sharp, and in them Caleb saw both fear and trust, a trust he hadn't earned, but would not betray. Gunfire roared. The settlers pushed harder. Caleb felt the tide turning against them. Too many rifles, too much powder. Another warrior fell screaming, blood spurting bright against the dust. The line sagged. The chief bellowed, lifted his hand, and pointed toward the ridge. Caleb followed his gaze. A wagon rolled forward, its bed stacked high with kegs, powder, oil. The settlers meant to fire it, roll it down, burn the warriors alive against the river. The chief shouted in his tongue, sharp and fierce. His daughter translated quick, "Stop the wagon or all die." Caleb's gut nodded. It was suicide, charging that ridge alone. But he saw no other way. He met the chief's eyes. For the first time, there was no suspicion there, only grim acknowledgement. Caleb broke cover, sprinting low, rifle clutched tight. Bullets whined past, earth kicked up around him. He ran harder, lungs searing, legs pounding, every step a prayer. He reached the wagon, just as a settler lit a torch, flame bright in the wind. Caleb slammed into him, the torch spinning away. They grappled hard, fists flying, teeth bared. Caleb's head snapped back from a blow, stars flashing white. The settler snarled, reaching for his knife. Caleb drove his shoulder forward, knocked him flat, and smashed his rifle, but across the man's temple. Bone cracked. The man went still. Another settler came charging, bayonet gleaming. Caleb ducked, caught his arm, twisted. Pain ripped through his side as the blade scored his ribs, but he shoved the man backward into the wagon wheel. The bayonet drove deep into the wood, stuck fast. Caleb fired point blank, dropping him. The wagon loomed, kegs rattling with every shot. Caleb grabbed the reins of the team, hauling them hard. The horses screamed, rearing. Bullets hissed past. One struck a keg. Splinters flew, powder spilling black. Caleb cursed, driving the horses forward, pulling the wagon off its line, away from the ridge. The settlers roared in anger, firing wild. Caleb cut the team loose with his knife, slapping their rumps. They bolted, dragging the wagon half off the trail, wheels sinking in mud. The danger of fire was gone. But Caleb was spent. Blood ran hot down his side. His knees buckled. Settlers swarmed, guns raised. Then the chief was there. He roared, charging with a tomahawk. Warriors swept in, arrows flying, rifles cracking. The settlers broke under the sudden fury, stumbling back toward their wagons. Caleb felt hands drag him to cover, the girl's voice frantic in his ear. "You live, you live." He blinked through haze, vision swimming. The chief loomed above him, face stern. He spoke low. His daughter leaned close, translating. "You stopped fire. Save us all. My father says, you fight not for self, but for people. Now you are proved." Caleb wanted to laugh, but blood bubbled in his throat. He coughed hard, spat red, and forced himself upright. Fight's not over. Indeed, it wasn't. The settlers regrouped, shouting, pulling back to reload. The warriors tightened ranks, forming a line at the river's edge. Caleb staggered into place beside the chief, rifle ready. The final charge came with a scream. Settlers surged, desperate, reckless. Warriors met them head-on. Steel clashed, fists flew, men went down locked together in mud and blood. Caleb fought like a man reborn. Every shot, every swing carried years of rage and sorrow. He thought of his wife, buried far to the east. He thought of the daughter he'd lost, her memory haunting him like a ghost. And he thought of the girl beside him now, her courage, her fire, and felt something he hadn't in years. Purpose. The battle turned in a blur. The settlers faltered, their line broken. Some fled, others cut down where they stood. Caleb lost count of bodies, of blood spilled. Only when silence fell did he realize it was over. The prairie lay littered with the dead. Smoke drifted thin in the rising sun. The river ran red in patches where bodies had fallen. Caleb stood, trembling, blood soaking his side, rifle heavy in his hands. Around him, warriors raised their voices in a low chant, mourning the fallen, honoring the fight. The chief faced him. His eyes, once hard, now held a solemn weight. He spoke deep, voice rolling like earth. His daughter stepped forward to translate, though her own eyes glistened. "My father says, you came to us as stranger. You fought as brother. You saved his blood, his people. For this, you are one of us." The chief placed his hand on Caleb's shoulder, firm as stone. The warriors murmured in approval, a sound that carried like the wind itself. Caleb swallowed hard, words stuck in his throat. He had never sought belonging, only survival. Yet, in that moment, with smoke curling around them and the sun blazing over the broken prairie, he felt something settle deep within him. Not peace exactly, but the beginning of it. The girl stepped close, her small hand finding his, her voice soft. "River tried take me. You pull me back. Now, my father, my people, they pull you back too. Caleb looked at her, then at the chief, then at the warriors gathered. For the first time since burying his family, he did not feel alone. He lowered his rifle, letting the weight of it fall from his grip. The war was done. For now, at least he had found a place to stand. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the blood-stained grass, Caleb Hunter knew his life had been changed forever, not by the war, nor by the wandering years that followed, but by a single act beside a raging river. And though the frontier would test him again, he would remember this. Sometimes the smallest choice, reaching into dark water, pulling another from the current, was enough to wash a man clean of his past.